Yeah, that was a great piece. Good. Thank you. Is that ready, Mike? Nope, you're perfect. As long as I'm not here, we just let me know.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started.
Offer to leave. I'll just just gonna go.
Once Councilman Pacheco's done interrupting me.
What kind of administration are you running?
So first thing, we need an alternative voting delegate for the WAM conference in June, middle of June. If anybody's interested in that?
Well, I'm planning on going, but I don't care about voting.
Well, if you're going, you might as well be the voter, the alternate voter.
I move the judge as the alternate voter.
Voting.
Second.
Do I get paid more if I do that?
I don't know. Are you good with that?
Paid by the vote.
Are you good with that, Mike?
That's okay.
Okay.
If nobody else wants to do it.
Okay. All right, is there anything from last week we need to follow up on? Somebody have any questions?
I think you brought up a good point on that. Fire, or the codes that we adopted not being accessible to public view. And is that the fact?
The, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, I think you're referring to any of the building codes that are adopted by reference and FPA standards and all that kind of thing. I would say it's probably right, yeah. Probably true.
So I was thinking about it. Is there a way that we could buy copies and have them at the library, like available for checkout? Where like people wouldn't necessarily have to be purchasing them, but they could at least take them with them to like maybe make notes or references or to do more research instead of like we were talking about like having to stand at somebody's desk and look through it. I mean, I don't know how that works with copyright stuff, but I mean, books are copyrighted and you can check out books.
I could look into that, absolutely. Sure. Be happy to.
Maybe we'd probably start talking about this for a long time, put it as a work session topic, because I don't think we should have a law, just like you brought up, that you can't just access.
I agree.
Yeah, we can put it on the list. Anything else? All right, guess we'll go into small trailer parking. You want to tee us up?
You betcha. I'd be happy to. The basic suggestion with regard to this particular ordinance proposal is that small trailers not be given an exemption to be allowed to be on streets and so forth, as the current law suggests. We believe that having smaller trailers as well as larger trailers do provide safety concerns, even though it may be a little bit different of a scenario than, say, a gargantuan trailer that's on the street. This ordinance suggests that exemption should be removed. And beyond that, Mr. Henley, do you think there's anything we need to add to that?
No, I think that's right. That's the essence of it. This basically came up when we were looking at the abandoned vehicle ordinance revisions that you adopted early on. And we talked to code enforcement. They say this is also kind of a concern. We have these, they're a little bit lower to the ground. Sometimes they don't have the visibility. And so people come around the corner at night or whatever, or a bicyclist or the like, and they can get hung up on those. So they had maybe we would want to consider this, or we might want to consider this as well.
So John, you're talking about like the sled type trailers, the flatbed type ones?
Flatbed type trailers.
Or just any
trailers
type of
without
small
a
one?
boat. Yeah, you take your boat out to the lake, you let it sit out there, but the trailer then sits in front of your house for a period of time. So that would, limit that to 3 or 5 days. You can have 5 consecutive days, but after that.
Okay, thank you.
So in the body of the main ordinance, didn't we have something in there about you could park your boat there for 36 hours or a camp trailer for 36 hours or something like that? So that remains.
That does. So for 5 consecutive days out of 30 days, you can park an RV, but after that you need to move
So I think it's something like under 4 feet high and 8 feet long or something was exempted. It was a height and a length exemption on it, kind of like an ATV trailer or something.
It is, yeah, basically over 20 feet long, measured from the tongue, or over 4.5 feet high. So,
That's
so
pretty cool.
right now, those are exempted from this. We're just saying that things now that would fall within those boundaries would still be considered an RV, and they would have to be treated as an RV.
It would just apply the same standard that goes to all other trailers to a smaller trailer.
Correct.
Everyone okay with it? Any more questions? Thumbs up? Okay.
All right, thank you. The next ordinance, if I may, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, is with regard to camping. The attorney's office and I think the court, maybe other staff, identified some ambiguities with regard to camping in the community. As you all know, we have lots of backyard kinds of camping, and this is not intended to alter that or anything. But we do have situations where private property is being used for camping kinds of uses. Overnight stays, it also is fairly typical, particularly when you see it in some of our larger department stores, parking lots, and so forth. This revision clears up some of those expectations and, like I said, ambiguities that we've dealt with in the past. And if I could, Mr. Henley, would you add anything else to that?
I'd be happy to, thank you. The existing ordinance is just so broad, just cried out to be examined. All it says is no person shall camp within the city other than at a regularly established and maintained tourist camp. I don't know when that was adopted, but I'm thinking it must be more than 20 years ago. So the question is, well, how do we have our Boy Scouts in their backyards or churchyards, or kids having campovers, people that pop in for a day or two and they want to park in your driveway and you're your relatives, and it's just more convenient for them to be out in your driveway, and you can still get together for family events, but at the same time not bother the neighbors to the extent of having somebody park there year-round or 30 days out of 30 days, and you're charging them a fee. So with that in mind, we came up and we had the proposed amendment, which addresses private property, so you can use your private property, but there's a limitation on that. It addresses public property for the things that we know about, such as the Flying J or the Walmarts, and it completely exempts backyard sleepovers.
Any questions?
Well, it's going to put restrictions on private property, and so I don't know, where do we get involved in that, and why do we stop Walmart from having the Good Sam Club there, and how do we affect a truck stop when it's designed exclusively to camp in the parking lot? And so it bothers me on the private property stuff. I guess I don't know why.
And I think you're right. That's what we wanted to make sure. So any a Walmart or a Flying J, basically any business that has a parking lot contiguous with it, and on the days that they're open, they can go ahead and continue to let their patrons and customers utilize the parking lot for purposes of parking. They have to agree, though, that people can come in there and use their facilities when the store is open or the business is open, though. So that permits people to, such as Walmart or Flying J, basically as a public service, certainly for Flying J when drivers trying to get off the road, to let people stay there. On the other hand, it doesn't let somebody just open up a field. I've got a field here, we're going to let people come in and camp and put up tents, but they don't have any sanitation facilities. We don't really have any sanitation facilities. You know, people park and the like. And so we put some restrictions on that. So the things that we know that happen, which is Flying J and Walmart, things like that, that's okay. As long as they kind of are open and they let people use their restrooms. As far as, your next door neighbors, though, we don't want to have them actually bringing in and recruiting in, a couple of camp trailers every day during the May through October hunting season and using their driveway as a rental area in a neighborhood when it shouldn't be used like that. And so we have limited that to basically 5 days, that they can use that for camping, and their kids' camping.
Well, do existing zoning regulations cover that as far as residential, and if somebody starts to use that as a trailer court, does it then?
Well, they might, you know, we might be able to say that and say, yes, you are doing that, but then you get into a question of, well, how do you prove that? We're just making everybody go up another step or two farther down. You know, we have to then find out, well, if they tell the people that are there, you just tell them, anybody asks you to say, you're my friend, you're my long lost uncle, or something like that. Here, we're just saying, you know, code enforcement can see that that's been there for 5 or 6 days in a row, and they start looking at it, it doesn't move, and then they can say, hey, look, let me visit with the owner about this, because this is in violation of a pretty clear code at this point.
Mike?
So this subpart B2 is what you figure would apply to Walmart, the way that they allow people to camp in there. I'm wondering if that, because I'm reading the second sentence there, this exception shall be limited to 2 consecutive nights, maximum stay. I wonder if that needs to say for any individual. If there's, because I want to try to avoid any ambiguities there, and because could somebody look at that and think, well, 2 consecutive nights, that means that only 2 consecutive nights could Walmart have any campers parked in their parking lot. I don't know if I'm splitting hairs too much there, but I wonder if we shouldn't put some language in there that says per individual camper or something like that to tighten that up a little bit, because I'm all in favor of Walmart, Flying J, or any of those places. If they want to let people pull in there for the night, great, you know, that's up to them. I just wonder if that should be added in there, but other than that, this looks pretty straightforward to me, if I'm not missing anything.
I will add that in, if anyone has a different opinion, I don't have any problem with that at all.
Kristen?
The only thing, I mean, I guess that I'm a little hesitant about is on the 2 consecutive nights. I mean, what if it's a private parking lot that a private business owns? I mean, are we gonna start monitoring their parking lots and how long people are parked there? I mean, I guess I understand the intention behind it, but taking the devil's advocate point of view, I don't know how we came up with 2, I guess. Like, why is 2 the threshold?
Yeah, and it was just an arbitrary decision, basically. We thought, you know, basically somebody who's in town, they are stopping there, they can have some bubbles, they need to stay over one night, they're tired, the next night they want to go up to the museum and that type of thing. Otherwise, though, probably 2's more than the average, probably 98% of the people that stay are here for just one night, and then an extra night would be sufficient. But it doesn't matter. I can't see the code enforcement's going to be up there monitoring people's parking lots that much.
Exactly.
But it doesn't hurt to make the ordinance accurate either, so it'll be that I can make the ordinance. If you feel that 2's insufficient, that's fine.
Regarding what you're saying, I don't think we should regulate business at all. I don't think I think that's over-regulating, telling a business place how many campers can stay that night in that business parking lot. If they want to let them stay for 5 nights, then that's their choice. That's not, I don't feel that that's our choice to regulate. And then the maximum 1 camping unit per 5,000 square feet on B, section 1, lot mini permit 1 time. I think that's over-regulating also. Why does it have to be 5,000 square feet and so forth? So, me personally, I don't like that one, and I really don't care for us regulating a business if they want to let campers stay or not for whatever amount of nights.
Well, I think for me, the camping restrictions in the city are for people that are camping in city parks and our parking lots and the ball fields and the long-term residents being there, making it an unpleasant place for everybody else to be around. Really concerns me that if we do this, when we know that tourism is one of our huge revenue sources when people come in, and I think we're making it appear contrary to that. Unless we have a problem that needs to be addressed. If it's ambiguities in the ordinance, let's clear it up for city property, city streets, ball fields, those kinds of things.
Mike?
Well, I think that we do need to have some regulation about this, because I can remember specific instances over the years of people literally parking a camper in their driveway and renting it out to people for permanent residents. Businesses, oh yeah, we've got, all these people coming in to work for us for a month, a week, a year. Yeah, just bring your trailer and come on and park out here in our yard. And they got all these campers parked out there in their yard and absolutely no safety, no sanitation or anything. They got them packed in there too close together, all kinds of different things like that. There are some very significant safety concerns about just people coming and plopping down a trailer or something, and I don't think we want tent cities popping up in businesses, parking lots and things like that. And so I think we do need, I would argue that, it's reasonable to have some reasonable regulations, because otherwise you might as well just say, yeah, everybody come on in and throw up a tent wherever you want to and that kind of thing. And I think that would be a real problem. I'm not in the business of trying to protect the business of campgrounds or anything like that. But I am in the business of thinking that we need to have reasonable and orderly things. Would you like it if somebody pulled in a trailer in the neighbor's backyard and, oh yeah, this is my employee for the summer and they're gonna live here in this trailer? I wouldn't like that. I think that's pretty reasonable. That's all part of reasonable zoning and reasonable control like that. The way this is drafted, I think it's an effort at that. If we wanted to increase the length of those things maybe a little bit, from 5 nights to something, maybe, but there's got to be some regulation of that, otherwise the potential for abuse is just too great.
I have 2 questions, and I agree with you. I think 5 nights. I have had relatives stay in my backyard where I've had a nice piece of concrete. They hooked up their motorhome so they had refrigeration, and they were spending money in Casper for like a week and a half. They had their own little car they towed, so they drove it around. I didn't have to lend them a car, but they parked it in the back of my garage. It was completely out of the alley, on concrete, and 5 nights, I think, is maybe pushing it. Some people take a 2-week vacation, 14 days or something a little bigger. And on the other one, from a commercial side, would this be getting rid of the guy on Seawide that sold Christmas trees there for 25 years? He parks his camper in what used to be the...
I don't know if he's camping.
I don't know. He's pretty much there six to whenever you bring a Christmas tree, but he's been doing that for 25 years.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I don't think the intent of this proposed legislation, is to eliminate those parking lot vendors, that have a business relationship with the host business.
Yeah, and I'm assuming he's leasing that piece of property for a little bit of money.
That would be my assumption too, absolutely. So I would suggest that that's
Okay.
not what we're trying to do here.
Right, but if it says it, then it's there. Bottom line, if somebody wanted to come up and say, hey, I can't have my family, relatives stay at my house for this, either can that guy. You guys need to do something. When it's there, in my opinion, it's golden, and so therefore, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think the balance that we're trying to find here is certainly trying to deal with the ambiguities to allow for things like the Walmart situation and the Flying J situation to continue and to occur. But I do think we need to be very cognizant of ways in which we can manage sort of the man camp scenario that can occur without the appropriate legislation in place to sort of stop that kind of a thing. And believe me, I understand the man camp scenario is an extreme of what we can face, particularly as an energy community. But But your help in finding that balance is exactly what we're looking for. And it's just exactly what we're looking for.
Well, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we change that 5 days to 14 days.
So it sounds like the length of time people are wanting to change, first off. So it's pretty okay with doing that.
What's on the table, 14 days?
14
Well,
days for the,
Where the 5 is.
Residential.
It says now it's 5.
B1, just change that to 14 instead of 5.
And I think that if you look at that 5,000 square feet, that's what, 50 by 100 and 50 by 100. Thing, and if you, I don't know if you're talking about pulling a 30-foot motor home in there,
What's the average lot size, roughly, that you'd see around here? 80 by 100.
so how's that work out to 5,000 square feet? I can't.
50 by 100.
Yeah, well, I know that. What's the average size? How does that
50 by 100 is it.
How's that compare to the average size?
It's an average size residential lot. I mean, it's 3,000 square foot more, so it's almost half of a residential lot, not quite.
So typically a lot's gonna be, some of the good-sized lot in the old part of town, they're typically like 60 by 130 or somewhere in there, so you're about 8,400 square feet.
so are we good with changing it to 14 days?
I'm game for that.
For the residential?
I'm not good with any of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The commercial, anybody have any interest in changing that?
I'd like to get rid of just like everything but this exception shall be limited to 2 consecutive nights maximum stay. I'd like to see that completely removed.
Any other thoughts?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
What part?
The part that says this exception shall be limited to 2 consecutive nights maximum stay.
Okay, thank you.
The rest of it I don't have a problem with. That aspect right there, I think we're regulating a business of how long, and I don't think that that's our position.
Did you have something?
Yeah, sorry. I understand the intention behind it. I mean, if any of you have been to Seattle or Venice Beach or anywhere similar to that in the last 12 months, you understand like what a threat tent cities are. I mean, it's kind of scary. Like when it's like late at night and you're walking through and there's like 400 tents on like a city block. And so I know that that's the intent, but what I'm afraid of is that the intent isn't going to line up with what ends up happening or what ends up being like perceived as what our intention is. Because I mean, say for CNFR, for example, say somebody's uncle calls them and they're like, hey, your cousin made it to CNFR. We're going to come bring our camper and we'd like to plop in your backyard for 10 days. I don't know that there's harm there.
With reference to item 2 under B2, and what Councilman Bates just said, if we were only talking about Walmart, Flying J, those kind of places, I would agree with it. But what I worry about is every other business, of whatever kind, that, well, we got some employees coming in to work for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year, however long. Come on and bring your trailer and set it up in our work lot, in our shop, in our yard, and just camp out in our yard for extended stays. I'm really troubled by that. I don't think that we want that.
But like
I
Chris
think that's the
said,
kind of thing that could run out of control and get away from us very, very rapidly and very likely.
but like Chris said, we have a zoning that you can't do that. We already have a law set that they can't set up man camps basically because of zoning or whatever. So, I mean, we're adding to something that's already a law, is where I guess I stand. And then the other thing is, are we making an issue before an issue has even arisen? I mean, we're talking about what if. Well, and I agree with Chris. when it arises, then we can look at it and say, okay, now we need to adopt, now we need to make some laws. But if it's not an issue right now, then why are we making it an issue ourselves? I guess.
If I could respond to that just quickly. I think, for one thing, waiting until someone raises it as a problem, then, that's chasing the horse after it got away, kinda. Because you got a problem and then you're trying to chase that down and solve that problem. And I think that we do have a potential of a problem here. I know that, being in the business of renting trailer spaces, we have had a lot more calls recently about people wanting to come and rent spaces on a temporary basis to put their camp trailers. I predict that we're gonna see, I don't wanna use the word onslaught, but, a little bit more acute problem than what we've possibly been aware of in the past. And the thing about, when you say a man camp, zoning and that stuff versus camping, well, I'm not setting up a man camp here, I'm just letting these guys camp here, and see right here it says that they can camp in here and that. And, one of the things about statutory constructions is that the specific statute always governs over the general statute. And so if your general statute, which I would say is a zoning, then you specifically start talking about things like camp trailers, tents, and that kind of thing. The courts are going to sit there and say, well, no, the specific rules over the general, and you specifically allow it here, and so the general provision doesn't overrule the specific. So I would respectfully say that I don't think we can just rely on our general zoning statute in this regard when we have a specific ordinance that deals with this specific thing. And so I think we do need to address those things in this camping ordinance.
Ray, and then Steve.
My question's for the chief. Chief, do you feel like you've had kind of issues? I know you guys are looking at that as far as trailers. You guys monitor any of that? Do you guys do any I mean, I know you guys have plenty of stuff going on in your docket, so I don't want to sit there. And I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you see any of that kind of stuff going on where you face any of that?
Unfortunately, we had some this weekend. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council. We had some this weekend that we, were called upon to do something about. Let's not forget I think it was the intent of staff was to bring something to you that we believe is potentially not constitutional. So right now, if I have somebody who has decided to camp on the river, perhaps in a park or in a city property or somebody else's property, and using the river for their sanitary needs, my overly broad ordinance right now prohibits camping anywhere in the city. So they have full authority to go to the judge and go, geez, there's people camping in Walmart parking lot tonight. You're being disparate against me. We're trying to bring an appropriate, constitutionally valid ordinance to you, because right now we consider the one that is overly broad. And I would refer you to Colorado Springs. Although their camping ordinance played a role in a very, very expensive lawsuit that was successfully brought against them. It cost them millions of dollars because of the overly broad nature of their camping ordinance.
Thank you. That's my question. Steve.
Well, first of all, in reference to like tent cities and things coming up, I think that the ordinance that's in place clearly would cover all that, because no person shall camp within the city limits other than a regular established and maintained tourist camp. So man camps, tent cities, whatever, wouldn't be able to do that. Secondly, the public going out and using a park and camping in the park in a public space is a lot different than Walmart as a private entity allowing them to do so. So I think that I know it's overbroad by looking at what we have right now, but it covers everything that we need. And if Walmart on their private property wanna do what they wanna do, I don't see an issue with it. I don't see where we should be regulating what Walmart or Flying J or anybody else does.
I agree. I think we probably still need to add wording that says that talks about private businesses, because to your point, it's just saying within city Casper limits. It's not talking about just city of Casper property. It's just saying within the city of Casper, right? So I mean, I do think we'd have to drill it down a little bit and maybe just say, upon private property, you do you, but on city property, you're not camping. Unless it's like a designated area, or, correct? Sorry, just very broad overview, like not talking about any specifics that we're talking about. That's the broad overview of what we're trying to accomplish, right? Is saying that right now it says within the city limits, you cannot camp unless it's designated.
So Mayor Pro Tem, Council, let me try to, the way it's written right now says that you can't have guests over and camp, you can't send the kids out in the backyard. That's unacceptably overbroad. We're actually looking for direction from council as to what do we want to govern and what are the reasonable restrictions we want to put on it. But I would ask that you give us direction so that we can craft an ordinance that doesn't get me in trouble with you're enforcing it on me, but you don't enforce it on them.
Yeah.
So, and the best way to do that is to delineate, these are acceptable forms of camping. This is not the definition of camping, it's just a temporary overnight stay. And so we just need to get it back into an area where I can enforce the things that need to be enforced without running afoul and getting myself into a legal battle over the validity of the ordinance. And Councilwoman, I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else?
I think that, and I am very much appreciative of the reluctance to tell private property owners what they can and can't do on their private property. But I think we really need that, and again, like I said a minute ago, if we were just talking about Walmart, Flying J, those kind of places, I'd say, yeah, okay. But I think we need to ask ourselves the question, do we want to allow a contractor to be able to tell their employees that are coming into town that, well, don't worry about a place to stay, you can haul your trailer in here and set it in our construction yard and stay as long as you want to, and don't worry about anything like that. I don't think we want that. I think that's, that, and if we don't do something like what this proposed ordinance proposes, I think we run that risk of just, every construction yard in town, every work site in town, having a bunch of trailers parked around on it with people camped out in them. And I don't think we want that for a lot of reasons.
Chris?
We've been through several booms and busts. We had the huge, national attention with the eclipse, and we have never had a man camp set up. We have never had private lots filled with vehicles. If it's a matter of equal application between private and public, then add in on public property on the ordinance. Mm-hmm. Literally add in a couple words. I don't think we have any other crisis before us.
Ken, do you have something?
I agree. That's,
Just a question, Mr. Vice Mayor. I believe in our P&Z rules, when we do that for R1 and R2, I think they're defined as single residential. So by that, you cannot have somebody living in a camper in your yard in perpetuity, I think. And I'd have to defer to.
Don't make me part of this.
Because I think we've been down this road once before when we had a property over on the river when we had two gentlemen living in a trailer that literally wasn't hooked up to anything, including water. And we finally got that moved out and the property was sold. But I think that was an issue for several years that we fought that one. Going back, this has probably been about 3 years ago, and I think we finally got it settled, but. So, I don't know.
All right, so is there interest in moving forward with this ordinance, yes or no? About tie, let's see.
Break the tie.
Who was, let me see your hands again.
Heavy as the head that wears the crown.
Right? Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
I don't think it made it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to probably agree with
Wait
Councilman
until
Walsh
Charlie
on
gets
this.
here and see what he says.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, the options are let it drop and die kind of thing. Or consider other amendments, like Councilman Walsh suggested with regard to the inclusion of public property or language akin to that. And those are the two options that I see.
Right. Well, I'm not smart enough, I know that, but if we could craft some type of amendment to help the chief out as far as what he needs, I think that would probably be beneficial. I know you're talking to Carter, Chief, but I just said that if we could come up with an amendment that would help you somewhat, make some definitions for you, but while protecting some of the concerns of everybody else, and some compromise, I'd be okay with that.
I'm wondering, and what I'm interested in here is giving the chief and giving Johnson guidance as to what our consensus might be. And just asking the question very broadly, is the consensus of those of you who voted against this that any property owner in town should be allowed to let as many people come and camp and set up trailers and et cetera on their places as they want to? Because if that's what the consensus of the council is, then we should draft an ordinance that in essence says that and allows that. If there, if the feeling is that there should be some reasonable regulation of that, then let's give some idea to these guys what we think reasonable regulation would be. If it's, so many square feet per unit that they move in, if it's that they can stay for a month or less or something, let's.
I don't think, I'll speak for myself. I'm not at all sitting here saying that everybody should just have free reign and you have 50 of your cousin Eddies pull up in their motorhomes and
Yeah, and,
just
and
make a
I'm
mess
just
of it.
asking
Yeah.
that as a,
Yeah, I'm not saying that at all, but I just feel like, we start telling private property owners what they can and can't do with their property. I think that we're overstepping our bounds there a little bit. And I don't know how you go about doing it, how you keep your Walmarts from, because essentially if you take it down to 14 days, then it comes back to what you said originally. Is that 14 days per person, or is that 14 days for the business? Because if it's for the business, then Walmart's got to pick 14 of their best days to have people stay in the parking lot. And then how do you go and police that if somebody comes up, or even if it's 2 consecutive days, and some family comes up for a soccer tournament and they're here for 3? We got to kick them out after 2 days and tell them to go find someplace else. And who's gonna police that? I agree with what Chris says. It just has not been hasn't been an issue in the past. Not saying it won't become an issue in the future, but the way that it's written now, there's not going to be man camps popping up all over the place, because that law will, the current law in the books will handle that from happening, or tent cities or whatever it might be. I agree going to maybe saying in the public space itself. I have no problem with that. You want to tell people they're limited to a certain amount of time or can't stay in a public space, that's one thing. But I think to tell private property owners that no, you just can't do it at all, I just don't think that that's right. We're over-regulating a little bit.
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I could ask a question, because I think I'm just totally confused. Mr. Henley's, maybe I misunderstood this. Did we suggest these changes so that the Walmarts of the world could have those provisions made available to them, or did I just totally mix that up?
No, that's it. Right now, they can't. I mean, it's totally barred. It's within our city. We're trying to do this to expand things. So we don't have any problem, coming up with some type of expansion whatsoever. But the thing is, right now, because it is so broad, it is likely unconstitutional in a lot of different contexts.
I think
and
you said
it
fix
puts
it.
us up for some either difficulty in basic enforcement or potentially with some type of civil lawsuit down the road. So we're just trying to expand it to a reasonable amount. Whatever you guys whatever you all would like, that would be fine. But yeah, we're not trying to contract at all. We're trying to say we can do things legally, but with some bounds is all.
But if we're trying to expand it, we're putting restrictions on for how long people can stay with you. I don't see how we're expanding it for the Walmarts of the world when we're telling private citizens, you get 2 days and then you gotta move on.
Because it says no person shall camp within the city other than at regularly established and maintained tourist camps. So everything except that is prohibited under the criminal ordinance. So I mean, if the chief wanted to send his troops out and start doing this, it would be miserable, and he's smart enough not to do that. But I'm just saying, the way the ordinance is written right now is just so broad, because everything that we've talked about is prohibited right now. We did this to expand, not to contract.
So we can always look at, I think that, like you said, the 5 and 2 days were an arbitrary number. We can change that if we wanted to.
I still don't understand why if we changed the wording on that, and said no person may camp on public property within the city, and not worry about restricting. When we start putting size limits on parking lots, days, at some point, are we gonna add the size of the vehicle, that kind of thing? I think probably the best thing I can liken it to is our noise ordinance, which we can't enforce. We'll hear it again, motorcycles are too loud. Well, if I get within 10 feet of it when it's going at X RPM with a decibel meter, I'll be able to give you a ticket, which is impossible. So why are we going down this? It's the public space, private space, separation that I think addresses the problem.
John, would that address a problem if we changed the wording to no camping in public spaces?
I think that would help define camping and just say you can't camp on public property or city property. Other public
Or
entities can kind of fend for themselves or whatever.
I would say, or on private property unless permission is given by the owner.
I agree.
Is everybody okay with that amendment?
Trespass covers that.
Is everybody okay with Chris's amendment? Public property prohibition for camping?
Yeah. Good.
Yep.
Okay.
That is good. No private unless permission or just.
I mean, if trespassing covers that, then I'm okay with that.
Just to clarify, so you're taking the existing ordinance now and just putting it in public, or on public property, correct? Everything else
Yes,
it's
I
been
believe so.
drafted here.
I think that's right, yeah.
Okay.
Well, wait, because the way that I understand that John's explaining it now, and it perhaps might have been a little helpful if we'd had a copy of the current ordinance, because I think what John's saying is that right now the ordinance says, thou shalt not camp in the city, period, anywhere.
Mm-hmm. It does.
And no person shall camp within the city other than a maintained tourist camp. And that's probably not enforceable if you tried to enforce it. But, and so if you change that to just say public property, that's still not very.
I think his intention was, thou shalt not camp on public property, which should be the ordinance, and leave private out of it. Was the intention behind his
So just replace that, the existing ordinance with something that says you shall not camp on public property,
Yes,
and other than that, it's just wide open.
that was the intention, I think. Chris?
Correct.
Okay.
Could we define camping a little bit too, like we have in the proposed ordinance, just to have some definition there, because the way it's phrased right now is just so broad.
Yep, is everybody okay with that? Okay. Anything else on camping?
So one more question.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Mr. Henley, with the proposal being changed to include no camping on public property, and the ordinance as it is with only that amendment, are you comfortable that Walmart can do what they want, Flying J can do what they want, and so on, or?
I think that's right, because, yeah, before it was just within the city limits, now it's not the city limit, it's just public property, so.
So then this gives Walmart the direction they need to say, yes, we can allow.
Sure, the private lots that.
Okay. Okay. I think we're good.
Okay.
Will that help with you? If you don't mind me asking.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, that gives us better direction, certainly. That helps us, get focused in, right now, everything's prohibited. I firmly believe that the law that we currently have is not valid. We're just trying to get it into something that is valid.
Okay. Towing fees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. The situation with regard to towing in our current practice and potentially the ordinance is allowing for a fairly disparate service that our citizens can expect with regard to vehicles that we tow, on their behalf. And so we've got some ideas included in the memo that we think might tighten those kinds of things up, particularly if council is comfortable with the idea of moving forward with like an RFP kind of thing that allows us to use one towing service with a certain fixed amount of pricing that we would that our citizens would be expected and obligated to pay, and with regard to the other upcharges that potentially citizens may pay or hopefully would not have to pay if we write the RFP and the agreement cleanly enough. Pursuant to that, we're hoping we can get some direction, if you'd like to take any, in regards to what we think would be a more consistent service that we'd be delivering to our citizens in partnership with our towing companies and or towing company that we enter into an arrangement with. And so with that, if I could defer to the chief to kind of guide us through this a little bit further, I think we could.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, again, this is one of the ordinances that we're looking at, and we're realizing the current ordinance, as it is written, indicates that council will pass a resolution regarding tow fees. We recognize that there's not a current resolution in effect, so we're coming to you asking for direction. One of the things that the council can consider is we don't want to deal with private industry at all. We'll let the market settle that in and of itself. But unfortunately, the police department sometimes tows people's cars against their wishes. We arrest them; they get in crashes. We don't, when they're blocking the roadway, we don't want to sit around until Cousin Eddie gets called with his trailer to, and so there's safety and things that we're concerned about. On the flip side of that, we don't want. I'm advocating that we don't allow our citizens to be abused because they've had a police involvement. I don't want towing to be a punishment in and of itself. It's an unfortunate byproduct of some of the things we do. I can give an example. Just a few short weeks ago, we were contacted by a citizen whose car had been towed. to get the car out of tow, the citizen needed access to get the documents that were within the vehicle. And the tow company that was holding the vehicle wanted an outrageous, over $100 fee to escort them to the vehicle, to get the documents out of it, so that they could come back to the office and now get their vehicle out of tow. So that's an example of the system right now can be abusive to our citizens. That's not the police department's intent, to cause further hardship on people that are already under a great deal of stress. And so what we're asking for from council is, in current ordinance says council will have a resolution. We don't have one, so we either need to make one, and we need to know which way you would like to go. Putting reasonable expectations on what a police involved or city involved towing can look like. And we don't want to have anything to do with private, your car breaks down on the highway, you call your garage that you're familiar with and comfortable with paying whatever bill they charge, that's between you and them. But for these city facilitated ones, we need direction if council wants to regulate that on behalf of the citizens or wash their hands of it. If so, we need to remove from this ordinance the requirement for a council resolution on it. Mayor Pro Tem, did I lay the appropriate foundation for that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Councilman Friel?
Okay, so in looking at the options that were laid out for us, first of all, putting an RFP out, getting the cheapest always is the best, because they may not be the best record company or tow company out there just because the money's the cheapest. There are a lot of upcharges that happen, and we've seen that over the years where they will do exactly that, go out to get something from a wrecking company, and they end up getting charged more money just to access the vehicle. I like the third option, where council would be able to set by resolution maximum chargeable fee, and if tow companies want to be a part of that, then they're a part of that. If they don't, if it's not enough money for them to be made, then don't be a part of the program. But I think then it sets a standard fee across the board to where citizens aren't being upcharged and they're not being overcharged, and you have the option of having more than just one company. We're not picking one company itself to be the tow company.
Councilman Walsh?
Yeah, I just wonder why you can't make amendments in the record agreement to address this. I don't know why the council needs to do it. Whatever regulation needs to be put on there, you could have a record agreement to people that wanted to be on the on-call rotation from the PD, that they not charge those fees, or that kind of thing. And then there's sanctions in here for hearings and removal of people that have been on them. I've participated in those when we've had those problems. So can't we address those problems with a record agreement under this system and not worry about council setting the cost for a wrecker? And if you don't keep a handle on it, it will get out of control. But it can all be done through the agreement process. So I'm just curious why it can't be done there.
With the chief's opinion on that?
Yeah, please.
We certainly can. Primarily the concern is the existing ordinance requires a council resolution. We don't have that. So I can work with that. I can create regulations on the tow rotation. I can take care of all of that. If that's the way council wants to go, we just need to get rid of the requirement in the ordinance for a council resolution.
So I agree with you. Yeah. In the past, that agreement would be put together, and then I think the council just does a resolution on the basic agreement. But are you asking to remove that resolution necessity, or? I'm not sure I'm opposed to that either.
Mayor, council, in full disclosure, we're looking for direction. Right now, we're not obeying what's in the current ordinance. We're just looking for direction on which way council would like to go on this. We can do a lot of things. I think, if you're asking for the chief's opinion would be, I don't want people to take advantage of our citizens and our visitors. through something that's already, by virtue of using these services, their day's already been, whether police involved or a crash or a breakdown. I don't want people being abused, but I certainly don't want to facilitate people being abused by a system. So I come from a jurisdiction wherein the state public regulation commission, and it was like 80 different things that they addressed in there, because people were charging sweeping fees and winching fees and standby fees and deadheading fees, and people were getting $1,000 tow bills to tow it 3 blocks. And so the primary concern is the ordinance as is written requires a resolution. If that resolution needs to take the form of we approve the department's policy of the rotational restrictions that are on anybody that wants to participate in that, I think that would probably meet the ordinance. I would defer to John's opinion on that.
And that may be the way to go. If that's the direction of the council, just let the chief, maybe our office work on doing a revised policy and then bring it to you for your resolution if you want to adopt it. So that would be, I think, a way that it could be handled.
Well, I'd like to make a recommendation that we handle it in that manner. Let the chief, if, I can tell you by looking at this thing that this agreement is unchanged. So if it, in years and years, so if it needs updating to address some of those problems, let the chief handle that. And then upon agreement, we pass a resolution that says we accept it.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, I tend to agree, because I think taking somebody, the cleaners, that they have no control over, if we tow the car and they want $100 to get the key out of the car, that's going too far. So I guess I'd like to see the chief be able to draft some rules to say, we're not gonna allow this, and then we'd have to stand behind it. And I'm not sure how we do that, other than have a rate schedule that we, within this range, kind of a thing. But I think we ought to try that.
I think Chris's idea with having the chief handle that with the record agreements and just having a resolution saying we agree with the police department be sufficient.
A question that I have, and the answer might be pretty obvious, but if there's a law enforcement hold on something, then the storage fees accrue and the towing fee accrue to the law enforcement agency.
Mayor, council, so when we are taking custody of it, I'm 100% responsible for that.
Mhm.
Up and until the time that I'm done caring for and maintaining that. So I pay for those when I'm requiring it for, say, a search warrant, for an investigation into a crash, to recover contraband. I'm responsible for the tow fees and the storage of that. It's when the vehicle, we arrest the sole occupant, there's nobody available and it gets towed. That gets towed to a private lot, a private company tows that, they store it, and it starts accruing storage fees because of that. And all these other, the potential for the upcharging, I think upcharging, whoever mentioned that, that's a very accurate description.
Oh, yeah, and similarly, if any of us are involved in a collision and we get hauled off to the hospital, you can't leave the car sitting in the middle of the intersection, and so it gets towed to wherever. Then the car owner and gets to pay the tow bill and storage fees. With reference to all these fees, I think there does need to be some oversight, some regulation, so that they're not just astronomical. I've seen, just like you, I've seen some people, that for instance, get arrested on a warrant. They weren't necessarily violating doing anything illegal. They're just driving down the road, and the cops figure out who it is and they call them off, or that they get taken to the hospital in a wreck or something, and then by the time they get out of the hospital, or by the time that they get out of jail on a totally, completely unrelated thing, and they go to get their car, and these places are just, well, okay, here's the tow bill, and here's the storage fee, and some of them have been known to really stick it to people, and I think that the city does have an obligation to make sure that they're not really really sticking it to these people. And so there does need to be some oversight, but I kind of agree with what Chris is saying. I think that, you know, that could be addressed in, you know, your oversight of it. But I agree with what you're saying, that if the current ordinance says that the council shall approve a policy, then we need to start approving that policy, or we need to change that to that we're delegating this to the chief of police and go forth and do good. And if people don't like what the chief does, then bring it back to us and we'll address it then.
And we know how popular that is. I apologize, Mayor, if I could just make one more comment. Remember, our intent in bringing this forward is right now the ordinance as written, we're not meeting it. We have a new council. You have seated a new council. This council has not done it. We're bringing that to your attention and seeking direction from you on a, you know, which way you want to go. And from the police department's point of view, we do not want to be facilitating the abuse of our citizens. You know, by virtue of the fact we got involved, now I don't want people getting out of the hospital and already been victimized once, get victimized again. Now, it's incumbent upon me to point out, not every tow company is taking it out on our citizens. There are absolutely businesses out there that are on the up and up, but it's a service that is ripe for abuse, and we just needed direction on which, you know, if council wanted to be engaged in preventing that. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a question?
I just have a comment. A lot of the things you were talking about, Judge, are all covered in this. They have to provide their fees, and a lot of times those can, when you see it and they're ridiculous, you just change them. It's a big business for them to be on the police rotation system, so they want to adhere to this where they can. But, you know, it also requires lot security and driver training and rec master certifications, and all those things can be put in here. And, you know, even like one on this existing one is they have to release the personal property if law enforcement says, even prior to paying fees. They don't get the vehicle, but they can get their purse and that kind of stuff out of it. So these cover a lot of those areas, and whatever is lacking in it can be added to it. So I think it can be handled pretty simply through the department.
So we want a resolution saying that we back policy of the chief of police, essentially.
Yeah, basically we just start following the existing policy. I think is where we fell short. What was the last one, 17 or something? But
Mr. Mayor, it looks like the last resolution was back in 10.
no, there was one that Caneen signed in 17, I thought, or am I wrong? Am I looking at?
Oh, you're looking at the record service policy? No, that was 10.
Yeah, that's a professional service, authorizing professional service agreement for impoundment record services.
Okay.
All that talks about is,
So we're just following on a renewal basis. I think it's a 2-year agreement.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I think what we'll do is bring forward a resolution, let you look at it, make sure we're on the right track, and then move forward from there.
Okay.
That's all right.
Go with that?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Reallocation of countywide consensus.
Mr. Vice Mayor, the last time the city received consensus funding was officially in 2012, fiscal year 13. And there's been a lot of conversation since that time with regard to the projects that have been done with it, what to do with the outstanding money, and so on. We found that we do have some residual dollars left over from the traffic signalization project at the intersection of Midwest and Poplar in the amount of just about $100,000 that we would like to redirect back into phase 2 of the Midwest Avenue project. This is the same project that we got Business Council funding for here recently. The difficulty that we have, and it may not even be a difficulty, I shouldn't say that, but the process that we have to go through requires us to go forward to the other consensus agencies and get their authority, if you will, their sign-off with regard to our redirecting those dollars back into the Midwest project, albeit a different phase, technically a different project. I did not want to do that without your blessing and agreement that that was the right thing to do with those funds. And if you agree and concur, we will go forward to the other agencies and say, hey, this is what we'd like to do. Please sign off, kind of thing.
That was pretty straightforward, Denny.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, agenda setting. Yes.
Just a question regarding that other option it could be used for, and I don't know, I'm asking, is that First Street, Poplar and First Street that we talked about, that they're redoing, and that working with YDOT, I do believe it is. Could that go to that as well as an option, or no?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, the answer is yes, absolutely. In fact, council could select any number of places for that to go. Unfortunately, council doesn't have the sole authority to redirect that funding, and that if there is feedback different than the Midwest Avenue project, tonight would be the night to let me know that, and I could take that forward, whatever that might be, to the consensus agencies and get their blessing as well.
I don't know which one would be better. I just brought it up because I know that that's supposed to be starting soon.
Mr. Vice Mayor, Councilman, the context-sensitive amenities, I think, is what you're referring to with regard to the Poplar Street project,
Right.
and so on. That project won't actually start until 21 or thereafter.
Okay.
So we certainly do have some time with that one.
Okay.
Phase 2, on the other hand, we're anticipating starting next construction. When does that phase 2 start? Andrew, I don't mean to speak out of turn on that one.
Your Honor, Council, phase 1 will be finishing up this fall,
Right.
and phase 2 hopefully is under construction next spring.
Next spring, yeah, that's right. So, so from that standpoint, maybe that's advantageous. But you're indeed correct. Council can allocate those funds wherever you think is the best way to go.
Is everybody okay with the Midwest project, or anybody have any other ideas?
I'm good with their recommendation.
Thank you.
All right, agenda setting. I think this is for the June 25th meeting. Right.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to put the International Code Council discussion on that one?
Yes.
Okay. And any other suggestions on what to put on, Chris?
My suggestions would be the staff recommended item on pool fees, because I think that would be seasonal, coming up right soon, and then also might have a little bit of urgency with the budget coming up, or you say after budget, on that class and comp study, so I guess that's not gonna affect this budget process?
No.
Okay. All right then.
Pool fees, everybody go with pool fees? Okay. Ken, did you have something?
Bob, Councilman Bob, what was the one that you proposed 2 weeks ago that I had agreement, but I'm not seeing it on here. I can't remember what it was. I'm sorry. Do you remember that you proposed,
It would have been M Street, I think, wasn't it, Councilman?
What?
M Street and that alley.
Well, yeah,
Access.
that was still a problem, but.
yeah, that's what
That's on there.
yes. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Do we want to put that one on there?
Well, I think we want to talk about it again, but quite honestly, it's what they brought before the P&Z last week was an issue over the garage, and he just wanted to replat, I think, if I recall correctly. And that's, he does own the property, so he can put a garage on it. But the problem with basically shutting down the alley is still an issue for the other neighbors, and I think in the long run it might be, because there are some apartments there. Now, they may come down someday, but it's nice to have an alley, but they may require us to work a deal with the church to get an exit to the alley on one end. We can't have trash trucks driving down there to a dead end. It just won't work. So I guess I would like to bring that up and see if we still feel that we don't want to go into a negotiation for a right-of-way or purchase of the property that goes into the river.
So is everybody okay with discussing that on the 25th? Is that okay with you, Bob?
What's up?
25th, okay?
Yeah, if we can do it.
That's Chris?
I guess I would add, I would probably fill out the day that state health plan option.
Yes.
Unless, are we at a stage where we're ready to talk about that? I mean, we've got the AG's opinion, right? And then I know there's some dissenting views from the legislator, but I think we should figure out all that stuff anyway.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Councilman, I bet you we could have something ready if we feel inadequate. If you're open to the idea of pushing it back until we feel like we got the complete set of data, we'll shoot for the 25th. That's all right.
Yeah, and if it like you say, if it's too big of a time crunch to put all that together, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
So one other item, in that top group, class and compensation study, I think we can drop that now, because didn't we agree that that's gonna happen next year? Or fiscal 20? Compensation study?
Mr. Vice Mayor, Councilman, what we had committed to do was bring back that discussion so that council could help us define the scope of that particular
Okay.
study, because it can take a number of different routes. And of course, that scope may be council saying, we don't need to do it, or we don't want to do it. That's certainly on the table too, but that's what I understood, that we were going to bring it back to you to help us define the
Okay.
scope.
Fair enough.
Anybody else? Do you have anyone you want to see talked about?
I think we're good. I think we're good.
That fill us in for the night.
Yes, sir. It does indeed.
Okay. Anything for legislative review?
Nope.
Okay. I guess we'll go around the table. Ken, we'll start with you.
Nothing.
Oh, sorry. This is mostly just my clarification. Mr. Henley, because I know we had talked about, whatever, like in the big hullabaloo, was that there were maybe some other items with the food truck ordinance that we wanted to discuss amending and changing. The reason we wouldn't do it on this one is this is talking about the International Fire Code. We would want to be amending the actual mobile food truck vendor ordinance. Is that correct? Sorry, that's what I walked away with the meeting thinking, but then I started questioning myself.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Obviously, this amendment deals with a specific item of kind of grease-laden fumes, so I think anything about addressing that would be appropriate for this. If there are things that are much off base from that, we drafted kind of an appeal process last time, and there probably needs to be some tweaking with that. I want to let you all have a chance to review that. But there certainly could be some that we want to bring up with a separate ordinance subsequent, or if they fit within this discussion, we could.
Okay,
Okay.
that's it. Sorry.
Chris?
I thought I had my hand up or something. Like, what are we talking about? Just to compliment it was probably David Street Station guys, but the flags that were put up down there look fantastic. It looked really good.
Nothing here.
Nothing today?
We talked quite a bit here tonight about regulating things on private property. I was troubled by a comment that a local businessman made was quoted in the newspaper on the story about the Mills Fire Department, wherein this particular person said, well, I located my business in Mills because Casper over-regulates everything. And I was really troubled by that, and in fact, I'm going to reach out to that guy and ask him, well, specifically, what areas does he see that we over-regulate? Because I will tell you guys that, one of my purposes in applying to get on the council is that I really truly want to make Casper an easy and inviting place for people to do business, but providing reasonable regulations for orderly growth and for having an orderly and safe community. I suspicion that the real problem that this particular business owner had is that if you're talking about some place to build a you know, a pipe yard, a big welding shop, a manufacturing thing or something like that. There really isn't that kind of property available in the city limits of Casper. If we were to annex areas, you know, open areas around, then yeah. But I'm really concerned about that. I think it's an area that we as a council need to continuously be concerned about. But I think that if we have people out there saying, well, the city of Casper is over-regulating these things, we need to look behind that and see, well, is it just that there are not areas that are suitable for that kind of an operation in the city limits, or is it something that we're actually doing?
I'll be reading a proclamation at Marge Cole's retirement on Thursday at the Lyric. If you guys want to go to that, you can. Other than that, that's all I have. I think it's at 5:30 Thursday evening at the Lyric. So, other than that, I don't have anything else. You have anything for us?
No, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
15 minutes ahead of schedule. Wow.
That's better than
Boy, are
Jared.
we good. Hey, I tell you what,
Don't
check
tell him I
this out.
said it though.
10 to 6, and you said 6 o'clock. Nice work.
Yeah, that's right.